In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a sensation of like being plugged into a current of electricity, so to speak. My whole body it felt like it was vibrating, and I was perceiving a presence of an ET, a male. And I just remember being afraid to look up into his face because I was kind of afraid of being afraid, which I guess is another belief I can take a look at. And I just wanted to know what truly happened in that moment, and if that sensation of electricity or vibration was my own resistance. Any insights would be appreciated. Thank you and good day.
Yes, sometimes spirit beings or extraterrestrial beings will vibrate at a level that allows you the practice to match it. So yes, you're always feeling only your own energy, even if someone is offering you a higher frequency to mirror or match. So they're giving you the opportunity to practice moving to a higher level so you can have more conscious awareness of the encounters and interactions that you're having with extra-dimensionals, extraterrestrial spirit beings, and so on and so forth. So don't be afraid of the energy. It's your energy, but it gives you an opportunity to expand yourself. All right, good day.
Hello, Bashar. Good day to you as well. It is an honor to speak with you today.
And you as well. What would you like to discuss?
All right. So in the last transmission, you told us a little something about the antiquity of yoga.
Yes.
Was it discovered, developed, or was it given to us?
It was intuited by those who were very, very close to the idea of nature and its forms and expressions of energy.
Okay. What can you tell us about the archetype Shiva? And was there a physical incarnation of Shiva on this planet at some time?
There have been physical projections that appeared to be physical incarnations, but weren't really incarnations in the classic sense. But archetypes can project physical representations that may seem very solid. So the archetype, again, is simply one of the ways that your collective consciousness has of looking at the concept of creation and destruction.
Okay. So Shiva is sometimes referred to as king of the yogis.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, again, because of the nature of the ebb and flow of energies being represented by certain yogic positions, and therefore at the very core or heart of the energy of the archetypal representation that you're calling Shiva. Because again, everything is about the ebb and the flow back and forth in different ways, in different forms, almost down to, or actually literally quite down to, the idea of atomic structures. Because as you have relatively recently in your history, in your evolution, started representing the idea of how atoms are structured and electron clouds are structured, there are different forms that are representative of lobes, spheres, toruses, and things like that, that are more representative of the probabilities of the existence of the structure of atoms and subatomic particles. And these also are representative of the idea of Shiva energy and yogic flow. Tapping into those electron structures can actually allow someone to intuit different positions in the body that allow for the most efficient superconductive flow of electron energy and electromagnetic energy and electromagnetheric energy through your body. So this connects directly to the idea of the core of the ebb and flow of the archetype of Shiva, because it is, again, the positive, the negative, all flowing into one another in a constant dance of creation and destruction.
All right. And what about Krishna?
What about Krishna?
So like, say like Shiva and Krishna are both often depicted with blue skin. And so I know that there's that thing with the Anunnaki.
Yes, and that's why that depiction exists. Because again, they are considered archetypal gods, and the Anunnaki in their time were considered gods as humanity, as Homo sapiens understood them at that time. And some of that recognition has been handed down through genetic memory, that at one time your so-called gods actually did have blue tinted skin, and therefore in certain cultures that genetic memory remained and was applied to the archetypal representations of gods.
Right. Okay, great. So a question, another one about the Anunnaki. So they came here, created Homo sapien from the native Sasquatch.
No. Not from Sasquatch. Remember, created Homo sapiens from early hominids. The hominids that were not genetically altered to become Homo sapiens evolved into Sasquatch, became a different branch of the hominid. So it's not that they took Sasquatch and created Homo sapiens, they took an early hominid that eventually became Sasquatch on its own without the genetic alterations. Very different.
Okay. So when they came here and created Homo sapien,
Homo sapiens.
Homo sapiens, and then they left. But did they then come back?
Some of them came back, but the ones that came back were not the ones that were here initially, because the ones that created Homo sapiens did so outside of their laws. So they were recalled. So the ones that came back, along with others, were ones who now knew they had some responsibility for the creation of Homo sapiens because their brethren had created them outside the law, and therefore knew that they had to provide some guidance to set Homo sapiens on a path that would allow them to evolve.
Okay. And so did they come back like during Atlantean times?
Yes, sometimes, although again, there were more species involved than just the Anu, who were evolving out of their present form and evolved into the beings that now occupy the Lyran systems and the Pleiadian systems.
Okay. And so about Lao Tzu, what was he connected to, and who was he? There's not very much that we know about him.
Connected to the consciousness of an archetypal form you recognize in your reality as the dragon energy. This is a level of being that exists in another dimension that is often interpreted as the form of a dragon in your reality, even though that's nothing like what they actually look like in their own reality. But Lao Tzu was connected very strongly, not the only connection, but connected very strongly to the dragon dimension, so to speak, just to use a term.
Okay. And in the Tao Te Ching, he describes the ancient masters. And so I was just wondering to whom he's referring to.
People that you don't remember in your history that have existed throughout the ages. Again, some of what we were talking about before, of different spirit beings choosing incarnations to come to you and let you all know that you are equal to them.
Okay. So there was one point in the Tao Te Ching where Lao Tzu says, like in referencing the Tao, he says, I don't know who gave birth to it. It is older than God.
The Tao is God. Nothing is older than God because older is just a concept. Remember, all things exist. There is no beginning and no ending to all that is. It just is. And Tao is a part of it. The only way that it could be, in a sense, from a linear perspective, quote unquote, older than God, is he was simply recognizing that it is part of the One. But the One is unbroken, homogeneous, and has no awareness and no experience. All that is the portion of the One that does know itself as all that is. So if you want to euphemistically say, well, the idea of the Tao is older than the portion that knew itself as all that is, you can make a sort of linear extrapolation that has some truth to it, in the sense that if you take it all the way back to the One, then yes, of course, everything in that sense is older than God, because God comes from the one too. But that's just more like wordplay than anything else.
Okay. So like in the Kabbalion, they use the word God to refer to or to describe the masculine principle, and then the universe as the feminine principle, and then as one described as all that is. So that's like...
Yes. Well, to us, there may be differences in terminology. All that is the portion of the one that knows itself as all that is. The one has absolutely no knowledge of itself, no awareness of itself, no experience of itself, because it has nothing to compare itself to. All that is knows itself, has a self-awareness, because it is also aware that there are other aspects of itself that make it seem as if there is something other than itself, which is the only way you can know yourself, is if there is seemingly something other than yourself to compare yourself to.
Okay, so I've heard you describe a particle in a vacuum with nothing to impose upon it, moving at infinite speed, so it's everywhere at once, hence
prime radiant. The prime radiant in our ancient language, but in your scientific jargon, it's called the single electron theory. You can look it up.
Okay. And so I was just wondering, like, could you consider the particle to be the masculine and the vacuum or the void to be the feminine?
If you want to. These things are just labels. If it works for you to do that, go ahead. But that doesn't mean it's an accurate representation of what it actually is.
Yeah, well, that's definitely what I'm looking for, is an accurate representation.
Then it's just all that is. That's all it is, because all that is everything. Masculine, feminine, neutral, whatever you want it to be, it is.
Okay,
it's existence itself.
Yeah. All right, I will have a think on that.
No, all right. By all means, have fun doing that.
So when Lao Tzu speaks about Wei Wu Wei, doing, not doing, where the poem writes itself when we give ourselves over to the moment,
yes.
Is this essentially like what you've described as the channeling state?
Yes. Because when you are following your passion, when you're in that vibration, when you're in the channeling state, whatever you wish to call it, you do a lot, but it seems like you're not really doing very much, because you're in sync, you're in harmony, you're in resonance with your true self, and actions are effortless, actions are joyful, and it doesn't seem like you're expending any effort. So it doesn't really seem like you're doing.
All right, the first one has to do with solitude. How important is solitude for going through the eye of the needle? I feel more joy, alignment, and aliveness during solitude. Can you expand on this?
The very idea of solitude is what has to some degree been happening because of your pandemic, allowing each of you to go within, be with yourself. It can be very important. It doesn't necessarily have to exist for everyone. But the idea of solitude allows you, shall we say, to really focus on yourself, allow your entire environment to nurture you, to cushion you, to allow you to be aware of the things in the quiet, in the silence, that are important for you to pay attention to without the idea of outside distraction, as you say. Now, again, not everyone is distracted by outside sounds, but for most people on your planet, solitude will be very important for you to take stock of who you are, to be quiet within yourself, and to really hear the thoughts clearly that come through your mind, to be able to discern the difference between those that work for you and those that do not. So solitude for most of you can be very important toward learning who you are.
Thank you. People with ADHD do not maintain focus on a single thing for a long period of time. They switch their focus rapidly from one thought to another, all based on what's most exciting to them. Does this mean that people with ADHD are better equipped to perceive the shifting of parallel realities, follow their excitement, and choose their preferred reality?
Not necessarily. Again, you have to take this on a case-by-case basis, because some of what you are referring to as ADHD can also be happening for negative reasons. It can be an avoidance issue. Switching from one thing to another rapidly doesn't necessarily represent the idea of following the waxing and waning of your excitement in a natural way. So the idea is you will have to look at the reasons why someone might switch, even with the experience you call ADHD, and avoid the idea of doing so because you're not willing to look at something that might be important to look at, to stay with something that might be important to stay with. So again, on a case-by-case basis, you will have to determine what is actually happening and whether for some people it is positive or for others it is negative. It can, in a positive way, represent the ability to go with the flow of your excitement, of your passion. It can, based on a positive utilization of the idea of switching around very rapidly, connect you to different parallel reality probabilities and options. But again, one must always be honest within themselves as to whether this is a flowing experience, following your passion path, or whether it is an avoidance experience, not wishing to look at things that you believe you might find painful.
Can different personality aspects within an individual's mind hold concurrent beliefs that disagree with each other, essentially?
Yes, of course. You find this most often in what you typically have referred to as dissociative identity disorder, or what you used to call multiple personality disorder. Because you know from the research that's been done there that one personality can switch to something completely different as a personality and have a completely different experience, completely different perspective, completely different opinions from the other personalities that may have been present a moment ago. So yes, it is absolutely possible.
How can I burn the fear-based beliefs that I'm not aware of? Are there ways to burn through them without having to become aware of each deep-seated issue?
The use of the term burn through them is interesting because it's not that you really have to burn through them to burn them away or burn them out or turn them to ashes. Again, it's the idea of being honest within the self as to what does and doesn't work, but not invalidating what doesn't work for you. But the idea of belief systems that are in the unconscious or subconscious mind in that way can again always be brought into conscious recognition by allowing yourself to ask what's going on in your physical reality, because the emotions, the thought patterns, the behaviors, and the experiences that are reflected to you are guiding mechanisms to help you determine whether you are holding on to negative fear-based beliefs or whether you are moving forward in a positive way. All you have to really do is be observant as to what's happening in the emotions, the thoughts, the behaviors, and the reflections of physical reality, to let you know that these are reflective of beliefs you may be unaware of within yourself. And again, always being able to ask the question, what would I have to believe in order to feel, think, behave the way I do, will always help you get in touch with them. Do you always have to be aware of what the belief is? No, there may be some exceptions. There may be techniques, tools, and certain kinds of permission slips. If you are really willing to know that you are powerful enough to switch, to become a truly different person in the moment, to know that your past is different, to let go of those things automatically and quickly that don't serve you. If you have that ability, then fine. You may not need to know exactly or precisely what the belief system is, but how many of you can actually say that you can do that without having some idea of what kind of belief you're holding on to? So again, it takes a great deal of clarity, transparency, and honesty to know whether you can truly just let go of all the negative and fear-based beliefs, whether you know precisely what they are or not, or whether you actually do need to go through a process of understanding what it is so that your physical mind can also have the same kind of clarity as your higher mind. So you have to each determine for yourselves how honest you are about whether you believe, truly know for a fact that you can do that without knowing what the belief actually is.
Could you define gratitude and humility?
Gratitude is the total acceptance of what is, and the allowance, total allowance of it being exactly what it needs to be to teach you what you need to know, to grow, to learn, to expand your consciousness. Humility is knowing that, again, The ego is only for the purpose of allowing you to focus in your process and experience of physical reality, and that there is not necessarily information that is accessible to you in what the ego thinks it should be, but to know and to trust and to allow your life to unfold in the way that it unfolds through synchronicity, knowing that everything is working perfectly. And if you are willing to remain in the positive state, then you can express the humility of knowing that everything you need is presented to you. Nothing is left out, but that you also don't know everything as to exactly when or how things should come to you. That you're willing to accept what is going on and make the determinations as to what works for you, to allow creation to unfold in the way that it automatically can, and to accept the totality of yourself and be appreciative of yourself and the way things unfold in every given moment.
And what is the difference between discernment and judgment?
Again, honesty can allow you to know the difference between excitement and anxiety. And therefore, with anxiety can come judgment. Discernment is simply the neutral observation of what is and isn't vibrationally compatible with your core vibration, your core frequency. There is no, shall we say, evaluation of it in the sense of this is better, this is worse, this is good, this is bad. It is the willingness to simply discern what isn't you vibrationally, but also the willingness to use whatever comes up in the most positive way for you, knowing that everything is happening for a reason. If you're willing to stay in that positive state to determine what that is, it will reveal itself to you. So again, honesty, knowing the difference between excitement and anxiety within yourself, and being in that neutral space that allows you to simply recognize, to simply observe what is and isn't you, as opposed to making an emotional reaction or response to it that brings with it some kind of value judgment.
And is there such a thing as positive ego or negative ego energy or manifestation?
Yes, of course. Again, the negative ego is the result of putting too much on the shoulders of the idea of the physical mind, when it's not designed to actually control anything, but only designed in the positive ego sense, the neutral ego sense, of allowing you the opportunity to have a physical experience. As we have often said, it's sort of like a diving mask when you go under the water. The ego is simply structured to allow you to have clarity in the physical reality experience. The negative ego thinks it needs to control everything because it's been given that task, because people may not understand that everything is automatically working in exactly the way it needs to. Even if things crop up that you don't prefer, it's there for a reason. So the positive or neutral ego will accept that it's there for a reason and stay in a positive state, just doing the job it was designed to do of allowing clarity of what's happening. Whereas the negative ego thinks it needs to know what will happen, what is going to happen, so it can control everything and manipulate details into place to make sure everything works, instead of